excited to introduce Shawna Swetech. We have been working together in a writing and poetry study group for about 1.5 years. And so I consider her one of my people, definitely. Shawna is a hospital medical surgical nurse for 35 years. She's also a poet and a visual artist, drawing inspiration from the deep wells of human nature and the natural world. Her poems range from the personal to the political, and she often writes about her experiences in the intense emotional field of bedside nursing. Shawna's poems have appeared in the Permanente Journal, Rattle, The Healing Muse, Marin Poetry Center Anthology, California Quarterly, and the American Journal of Nursing. She was a finalist for the 2019 Discovered Emerging Artists in Sonoma County Award. Shawna believes poetry and art are important healing medicines for the ills of our modern world. Please welcome Shawna Swetech.
Thank you very much. I wanted to say thank you to start with for Aqus Cafe for supporting community and the literary arts, and a big thank you to Sandy and for hosting this wonderful Rivertown Poets for the last 7 years. So when I agreed last fall to be a featured reader for the Rivertown Poets, I certainly didn't feature being in my husband's art grotto and Zooming. I didn't even know what Zoom was. I figured we'd be all hanging out at the Aqus Cafe, having a little something to eat, you know, enjoying each other's company. But here we are. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I can't say I dislike it, but it's not quite as fun as being together. But anyway, here we are with a double pandemic going on, with this coronavirus keeping us kind of locked down, and the fight for social justice, and certainly a lot of rich, what do I want to say, rich things to make poems out of. So I really enjoy poetry in general for helping myself understand the things that are roiling around in me, and it's a way to be with things and kind of holding them up to the light, which, like our poet Forrest Gander, local poet, says, writes about how we can deepen our understanding and just find beauty and healing through language. So I have a selection of poems to read tonight. I'm going to start off with a few that are in types of form poetry. I like writing in form because I generally kind of have a narrative voice in my work, and it kind of just breaks it up a little bit. And then I have some nursing poems, and then I have a few that are more nature. I get a lot of good prompts and subjects out of writing about nature. So this first poem is an ekphrastic piece, and an ekphrastic poem is something that's written in response. It might be to a painting or to music or other things like that. And so this piece was written in response to a painting, abstract painting by a Bay Area artist, Sharon Pastor. And it's also a haibun, so it's kind of a double form. And the haibun has a prose piece followed by a haiku. So it's called Almost Serenity, After Wine Country by Sharon Pastor. These colors of heather, olive, ochre, a zigzag of gold, anchored to a still body of water under a pale clouded sky, etched lines of lilac, squares of amber, sienna. I want to live this view at one with its hue and stillness. But just when it feels like home and my feet start to root in place, a dash of tangerine zings across the center. I'm not ready for that, even though it starts with a little block of teal and ends with a dab of lipstick red. The thin slash commands, distracts, driving back to industry, to obligation, the to-do list. It's like my real life, when all I want to do is just stay. Old autumn vineyard, Squall of red-tailed hawk. Why, why, why? This next piece is also a high bun, and it's a memoir. It's called Through the Knothole. His work rough hands tickling me, smooches and scruffy Sunday morning whiskers, calling out, "Give me some sugar," while folding me into a hug. How I danced around like Shirley Temple when he'd ask me to do a little jig. All his family famous sayings like, "It's good for what ails you," proclaimed when I hesitated over something unfamiliar, like a new vegetable, to which I'd reply, "But Daddy, there's nothing ailing me." Even when he was 90 and I was in my 50s, he taped my poems to his refrigerator, still called me baby girl. Gone almost 15 years now, I've forgiven the Friday night to Sunday afternoon binges when he turned from my funny dad into a crabby old man I didn't recognize, his old war wounds and sorrows rising to the surface like an oily tide. Now his humor lives on in us, our conversations peppered with his quips, like at work in the middle of the nurse's station after a hard shift when I announce, "I feel like I got drugged through a knothole backwards." I want to imagine him whistling low under his breath in some heavenly garage, like he did in our little tract house in Long Beach, hands paint covered, as he putters around with brushes, tools, oil paints, fixing things or making art, or out in our big garden in his patch of summer tomatoes. My dad taught me busyness is happiness, and that, it turns out, is good for everything that ails me. Orange, pink, goldenrod, all the ways the sun rises, dinner plate dahlias. This next piece is a mirror poem. And a mirror poem is 2 stanzas, and the images spiral in, and then the second stanza starts back up with a last image and line of the first stanza, and then backs out, spiraling back to the beginning. It's called Mirrors. Fall, the season of dying, returning to the roots, energy slows, recycled for another day. The wind changes direction, cools, and electrifies. I shock myself on everything I touch, sharing harvest, the memory of firestones, apples rolling into the road. What shall I gather now? Wild rose hips, figs, seed? What to leave behind for deer, the birds? What shall I cling to of my roots? What's left of former selves? I reflect inward and let go. Everything releases its beloved greenery, blossom. Everything dies. Everything dies, greenery, blossom. Release everything, beloved. It's a must to reflect inward, to let go. What's left of roots, of former selves, and what you cling to. For deer, the birds, leave behind figs and seed. Gather the wild rose hips, the rolling apples as fires storm the road. Touch and harvest shared memories of everything. Shock, electrify the self, change direction. The wind cool, slows, energy recycling for another day. Die back to your roots, return. Fall is the season of mirrors. Now I'm going to move into some of my nursing poems. And as Sandy said, I've been a nurse for 35 years, working in a hospital at the bedside. And it's been a wonderful experience, challenging and hard, and just so full of things. And this is kind of poignant now because I'm retiring in October. So coming to the end of my ride with that. First piece is a prose poem. It's called For the Millionth Time. This morning, as I ran room to room on a busy medical unit, I fell in love again with the calling of caregiving, with each patient, their pains and their illnesses. The long wait for fires of sepsis to cool, the dragon of pain to lie still, for bones to net, and treatments to swell the fighting ranks of red and white blood cells. I fell in love with the unfathomable miracle of the body, all its frailties, how our breakings illuminate a pathway to wholeness. Like when I held the hand of someone crying, waiting for her cancer surgery, I said, let's take 5 breaths together. Soon, a haze of peace settled around us, and I saw the light shift in her eyes, felt the at-one-ment as we held each other's gaze, one human being to another. I fell in love with the medicine of love and how it always saves us. This next poem, oh boy. So some of the most challenging people to care for are people that kind of show up over and over again, and some of their medical problems are related to their lifestyle. And this poem is called To the 35-Year-Old in Room 519. It's almost 7 a.m. You're probably waking now as night nurses hustle around, finishing up. I'm driving in for my morning shift, hoping the benzos are working and you aren't in 4-point restraints again. So many things about the body you don't likely know, perhaps don't need to, like the heart's Purkinje fibers, the kidney's glomerular filtration rate, or the concentration of salt in tears. I doubt you've heard about cytokines or how alcohol kicks Kupffer cells into overdrive, ruins the liver. But when I asked you how many glasses of wine you drink a day and you said a couple, of course I wasn't referring to 16-ounce tumblers. By now, you should know why your belly is bloated, your eyes yellow, and why you vomit blood. Portal hypertension of cirrhosis, the ooze of esophageal varices, bottle by bottle and year after year. But this time, will you stop? Will you take the hands extended? Will you stop before you come to the edge and before your slow suicide succeeds? And this next piece has to do with one of the roles that I actually kind of like, and it's helping people pass over. And it's called American Sunset. American Sunset. Like the plastic bag scene in the movie American Beauty, my patient's hands flutter and spin in the air, artful and lovely, as IV tubes fly between forearm and morphine pump. I touch his shoulder and bend to his ear, tell him he's going on a journey today. Alone, no family, no bedside vigil. But hour after hour, I bear witness until his body goes colorless as salt and just as still. 87 years sundowned by disease and dementia, but no tears, no prayers, no final words for this mother's child, grandfather, war veteran. One last glimpse of his kindly face. We zipper shut the body bag, slide the load to the gurney, away to the morgue, the crematory, where tissue and bone of no further use whirl to a flurry of ash. And this next piece, in a similar vein, sometimes we have people that are on our unit for weeks and we get so attached to them and how difficult it is to go through that journey with them. Lighting the way over. Midwives to the dying, nurses coach and carry step by step the ones coming to their end. All these patients, their families, the stories, and how they leave this world live on in us. But hers went in so deeply, the dignity and grace, as the forest of her respiratory trees burnt down, lungs so full of char and leavings, oxygen and gases barely exchanged. her kindness, as tumors grew cell by cell, building excruciating temples in lymph nodes, organs, and bones. I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Her voice followed us home, became a sorrow we couldn't unhear. Week after week, we wondered with each new medicine added if she'd finally turn the corner. But her oxygen needs grew greater instead of normalizing, and she shrank away as cancer stole everything it could find. 55 is too young, we said, fighting to heal her, but in the end, we fought hardest just to do what she asked of us, to keep her from pain. So we kept the meds flowing, called the doctor when it wasn't enough, supported the family when it was clear she wouldn't make it home. All of us crying as we watched her recede. Every time we went in her room, our hearts broke, but we kept on, knowing each of our small acts was a gesture of faith, of love, a light illuminating the wide bridge she'd pass over from this radiant world to the next. What I love at work. Thousands of peoples, thousands of bodies, the brief, breathtaking intimacy of giving care, witnessing lives, eavesdropping on organs, doing the miracle work of keeping life alive. I love the tidal flow of lungs, the blow and breach of the twin whales in the chest, inhaling and exchanging those critical gases. I love the morning ritual of removing my orange stethoscope from my neck, warming its face on my hands so as not to make my patient jump. I have them sit up, lean forward at the waist, open the back of the hospital gown and expose the skin. Then, inserting the instrument's gray ear tips, I rest my hand on the shoulder, say, take a deep breath, then place the diaphragm between the scapula, move it side to the spine, auscultating lung fields, listening to the in-out whoosh. I might hear the crackles of heart failure, hoarse congestion of pneumonia, wheeze of asthma, egophony rattles rhonchi stridor, or the lack of airflow from emphysema, cancer, or lobectomy. All the while, I'm marveling at the largest organ of the body, the skin, its color, tattoos, scars, tan lines, wrinkles, hair, visible ribs, or soft, fleshy rolls. But what I really love at work is caring for all these magnificent people all these years. And my last work piece, and this is one of the things I kind of figured out to take care of myself in the process when there's hard shifts, is being with my animals. So this poem is called Catatonic. 12-hour shift completed. 12 hours of flitting room to room, a wingless bird stopping only to peck, peck, peck at the computer's chart before flying off to the med cart, the dressing cart, the pantry, grabbing clean linen, calling the doctor, giving a shot, a pill, a tray of food, helping someone out of bed, giving hope, giving answers, talking, teaching, assessing, rushing room to room, hour after hour. Finally, I pull into home's dark drive, cut the engine and close my eyes, feel the weight of my bones, the throbbing legs and feet. As the car door swings open, the cat jumps onto the jam, demanding to be picked up. I cradle him high on my chest, bury my face in his long white fur and pet him with both hands, lost in the deep vibration, the softness, his throaty purr. What better tonic, I ask you, than that of a warm, purring cat? I wanted to read a couple poems. I really have been trying to wrap my head around and understand the Black Lives Movement, the racial justice, and all that, and what my part in all this is in it. And so I've been doing some writing around that. This poem was printed last Friday in the Benicia Herald, and it's called All the Pain and Glory. I never did, which is to say, among other things, it's unfathomable. And by that I mean, tell me what you can. You can't say too much. which is only to say, show me what living's like, multi-generation, the cellular embedments, which can, must, will. And since we're talking today, let me stop here to say these matters are uncomfortable, but I am not fragile and it can't be turned away from. So now let's eye to eye. And by that, I mean only tell me all of it, which is to say, I want to see you, to see you, to see, to finally see. And this piece is kind of an antidote for all of these hard things we're going through in the world right now. And it's called How to Live in a Broken World. Black lives, ICE raids, pandemics, riot-geared police, and the world at war, the whole damn thing in bilious upheaval. How to go on? Every morning, rise on purpose. Fill a cup with some delicious elixir. Make a place. Build a morning altar. Breathe. Breathe again. Begin the scavenger hunt of a new day. Your list should include what brings light, joy, goodness. Then everything in hand, sew it together with spider web, finery, and infinite starshine, the light that's illuminated every darkness from the beginning. Watch bees. Notice how intention is built into their every cell, their entire community. Listen for birdsong. Imagine their language. Today, what language will I use? Words as weapon or as welcome? Stay away from angry people, the 6 o'clock news, dark clouds that never stop threatening rain. Save room for something cool and sweet, a little ice cream perhaps. Do your best work. Then break free to feel the breeze on your face. Be in the fullness of every moment, as if this is it, your last best chance, because the world may never stop breaking, but you can. Okay, and then I've got just a couple more, and they're kind of moving into nature a bit, so out of some of the harder stuff. This poem I wrote a few years back, and it was when I learned to scuba dive, which was kind of a struggle. And it's called Learning to Breathe Underwater. Slipping down, a salty womb presses in and closes overhead like liquid glass. The regulator mouthpiece is clenched between my teeth. Its black hose and umbilical cord to the metal tank on my back. With each halting in-breath, condensed air hisses into reluctant lungs as I strain to equalize pressure, painfully building in ears and sinus. Fight the need to kick upward furiously, rip off mask, and madly gulp the fresh air. But then my finned feet land on the sandy bottom, and I exhale, bubbles streaming past my face. I watch them thin and shimmer into concave discs, floating upward like mercurial jellyfish. I watch the shallow penetration of raindrops on quicksilvered underside of rolling swells overhead, and the darting fish in yellow and electric blue. Rocked in the gentle surge, I close my eyes, become fish, become embryo, and suddenly I remember how. In my lifetime, I've also done a lot of vision questing, and I trained to be a vision quest guide, and I wanted to find a nature poem, and so I pulled this one out of the archives that I actually wrote in 2002 while I was on a vision quest. Of course, I had to fix it up a little bit before I brought it tonight. It's called In Heartless Flats, Inyo Mountains, October 2002. Impossible. The silence of this high desert. I imagine pinyon pines catching sound in their flat green needles, channeling it from thin branch to rough trunk and then down into dusty ground like a forest of acoustic lightning rods. Yet there's a low oscillation within the absence, and I hold my breath, strain to listen. In the nubby limbs of juniper just beyond the flat, perhaps kestrel or sage grouse adjust their feathers. Maybe deer mouse, Great Basin collared lizard, and meadow vole chant with their small voices. Is the earth herself speaking in a hushed whisper? Wind weaves through the distant fields of sage and desiccated creosote as darkness falls. Maybe the red shale rocks are settling down for the night, their stony lids clapping closed in sleep as stars snap on and off like tiny night lights on the violet walls of the night sky. Maybe it's simply the whoosh and whir of platelets, red and white cells spinning in the plasma past the cochlea of my own inner ear. But this I know I heard, the gentle stretch and expanse of my spirit, opening its wings, kneeling down, kissing the ground. Now one last little tiny one, and I want to dedicate this to my hubby, Jay, who's listening in, and we're about to celebrate our 46th wedding anniversary. Miracle of miracles. So this is a Valentine for Jay. What is love but a prayer? A wish to feel delight along life's byways. Just today, as I stood at the kitchen sink, swirling dish soap around a silver bowl, you came up behind me, wound your arms around mine, chest squeezing into my back. I leaned into your warmth. After all these years, that familiar solace suffuses me still, like sunlight, bright and streaming after a long, long rain. Thank you so much.